seeing much more a multinodal city with various clusters of activity, and within those clusters you have mixed use. And so the biggest development projects in the city, whether it's Atlantic Yards in Brooklyn, potentially Sunnyside Yards in Queens, Hudson Yards in Manhattan, are all looking at mixed use as a new model of development. So example, not only do you have retail that's oriented towards the needs of the residents, but you also include commercial office space. And in order to make the commercial office space, you need larger chains of retailers who might actually give the commercial people something to do after work, whether it's shop or entertainment restaurants and bars and other kinds of things.
So, ground floor is really important. But how do you plan the ground floor?
It's a really good point. In our project in Australia, we're doing a high-density mixed-use tower that's residential, commercial, hotel, and retail. And on a relatively small site, going very tall. Even on that restricted site, what we've done is divided the site into 60% built space and 40% open space. And that creates an argument for allowing the city to let us go taller. So in a zone where we could have built a tower that was 190 meters tall, we're asking for a variance that we can build a tower that's 300 meters tall. It's a pretty big increase, but if you can imagine 40% of the ground floor plane becomes an active public use that activates the site for people not just coming to the building, but people in the neighborhood, then you start to create a kind of mixed-use neighborhood that doesn't die down after 5 o'clock, which is often the problem with a mixed-use district. If you don't have enough residences, it feels empty at night and on the weekends, which is the case at Battery Park City for a long time, right? And so it's difficult to get the right balance between commercial office space, residential, and then all the amenities that make it work around the clock, 5 days a week, 7 days a week.
And moreover, is there any problem to combine affordable housing and luxury condominium or the kinds of development?
I think it depends on how you do it. I mean, for a while there, some developers in New York were integrating a certain amount of affordable housing into their developments, but they would put a separate entrance. And those units would not necessarily use the same lobby or the same amenities. That's not necessarily what integrated mixed income housing is about. What it's about is about creating a context in which, whether you're in an affordable unit or a market rate unit, you're mixing, right? You're sharing the same amenities, you're sharing the same lobby, and therefore there's a kind of tendency for people to be surrounded, like people have greater access to opportunities, right? And so you can imagine kids of different socioeconomic backgrounds growing up together in the same community and in the same building as neighbors, and that being a kind of positive social influence rather than everybody who can afford to buy something lives over here and everybody who can't lives over there. And so it's a pretty commonplace practice here in New York, building integrated mixed income housing, but there's not enough coming online fast enough, in large part because the profits for affordable housing aren't great. And so the market needs to be incentivized by the public sector, by the government, through tax breaks, through tax abatements, through different kinds of programs, so that the market responds with the inclusion of affordable housing. So very often what you see are zoning bonuses, right? So if a site is zoned for X amount of development, by including affordable housing, a certain percentage of affordable housing, you can now build X development plus a bonus.
And we are curious about 111 Street building, Needle.
Yeah, the Needle Ski Tower. So that's 111 57th Street. I'm sorry, that's 11 West 57th Street. It is a very tall, slender tower, but that's an anomaly. That's a luxury product. It doesn't have any affordable housing units in it. And the reason a project like that can exist is because of the land value generated by the specific site conditions there. It's married to a historic structure, and the new structure rises out of it and has views of Central Park and Midtown. And if you can imagine one apartment per floor, you come out of the core, you look north, you have expansive views of Central Park, you look south, you have expansive views of Midtown and downtown. So it's pretty high dollar value product that's entirely different from what we were discussing at, say, for example, Seward Park, which is a mixed use, but also mixed income, affordable housing rich community that has been planned there. And then there's Domino across the river in Brooklyn, also mixed use affordable housing.
Now, this is more detailed to architecturally. How do you solve the problem of structure?
It's got shear walls. The walls on either side are what carry most of the load, and it's a column-free tower. And so it's fairly rigid between the walls and the core, and then you get open expanses of glass on the north and south. There's obviously swaying, but there's a mass tune dampener, and it's really through engineering. High strength concrete, the thickness of the walls, and the ability to really have a very compact footprint, I think helps, because it's not a huge building. It's a slender building, it's a tall building, but it's also a fairly small footprint that's close to square in plan. So you can imagine if you make two of the walls very rigid, and at the same time you have a central core, that's a fairly rigid structure.
We are curious about the Port House project. And
We have been there.
there. So, how does that is an innovation project or just remain the facade of old buildings?
So that's adaptive reuse of an existing building. So that's the meatpacking district here in New York went through decline as industry left the city and meatpacking companies no longer worked within Manhattan. And so developers started looking at the land. It's a good location, it's close to transit, it's not a long walk to the Hudson River Park. And so it's amenity rich, just sort of naturally. It's just north of the West Village, just south of Chelsea. And yet these warehouses existed, and in order to maximize the value of an investment, you would want to add to the warehouses, right? And so on that project, it was a competition, and the original founders of the firm, at that time, it was one of their very first projects, and they took a risk. They basically came up with the idea of buying air rights. Now, the air rights were capped by a height restriction, right? And so you can't go any taller. And what they did was, since the air rights can only be bought from your adjacent neighbors, right, on the same block. So you can't buy air rights from your neighbor across the street, but you can buy air rights within your city block. But this person had bought all the air rights, right? So the neighbor wasn't going to ever go up. So the solution there was to respect all of the height restrictions, respect the setback from the historic building, the existing building, and cantilever to one side, just enough to actually materialize the air rights that the owner had bought. Because otherwise he would have left them on the table, this idea that you buy something but the restrictions don't allow you to build it, so you leave it on the table and it's done. You lose the value. Instead, we gained the value by cantilevering of the adjacent building.
I think it's a very unique phenomenon in New York. we are very curious about how they can cantilever over the old building.
That's why, because the neighbor has no air rights left.
So
Obviously, there's an agreement.
Yeah.
I wonder how it could be possible this structure to connect to old building. It's works.
It really depends. I mean, in that case, I believe that the perimeter walls of the warehouse are load bearing. So the first few stories of the building, the warehouse, the brick building was supported by the walls and interior columns. In order to put the addition on, they threaded new columns in. So it's basically two separate buildings, but sitting on top of each other.
Could you tell us about the most important point, design point of luxury apartment?
It's 57th Street, the 57th Street Tower, for sure. It's, one apartment per floor. As you go higher in the building, it's duplexes and triplexes, three floors per unit. It's very exclusive and it will be a very high-end product. What distinguishes it from other offerings are the materials. This is a terracotta building right now. We're in the Woolworth building, one of the most famous tall towers in the world, especially because it was at one point the tallest tower. But also because it's beautiful, right? The material stands the test of time. It's terracotta, and if you look out at the pilasters and the fenestration, the articulation of the facade, you'll see that it's worn over time. It's got a patina. It looks rich. And so on 57th Street, we have contemporary terracotta and contemporary glazing. But that's, using technology, you're sort of guaranteeing that 100 years from when that building is built, it will withstand the test of time, even at a very tall height. And so that's our kind of philosophy on materials. Try to use natural materials that will change over time, whether it's wood or metal or stone or glass, or in concert they look like they are natural.
I think the shop argument is rapidly going on nowadays. So is it there's a differences compared to the start of time and
That's a good question. There are definitely differences. Size is one of them, but also the variety of people just grows. I mean, the firm was founded on the principle that you can practice architecture coming from many different backgrounds: sociology, marketing, business, philosophy, you name it. And at the same time, the bigger and more complex the projects get, the more specialization you need from a technical perspective, right? And yet, the firm hasn't lost its initial mandate to be diverse. I think that's critical to our success at every step of the growth chain. Whether we were a firm of 80 people, a firm of 160, or a firm of 200, I think we've been successful in maintaining the culture of the firm intact and making sure that people feel like their opinions and their ideas have a place at the table. It's not just the partners, it's not just the senior people, it's not just the people who have been here 5 and 6 years or have worked on 3 or 4 projects. It's everybody from the new person who has been at the office for 2 weeks to the most senior person or partner who contributes the ideas and does the work.
This is a little philosophical question. What is your concept of home?
Of home?
Yes, we are recently there, so we're asking everyone to this question.
My concept of home, I travel a lot, like a third of the year. So it's very nice to think of home as a place where my closest friends are, and that happens to be New York for me. But having access to my friends makes it feel like home more than anything. I mean, physically, I live in an apartment, I have a dog.
Oh.
So it always feels like home when I come home and my dog is waiting for me.